I'm Billy S, welcome back to the channel. Last year, I did a video talking about my favourite NPC questlines from each SOULSBORNE game. This time around, I instead want to talk about my least favourite NPC questlines from each SOULSBORNE game. These are the NPCs whose quests make me groan anytime I have to encounter them. In fact, I might just avoid them altogether, and most of the time I do. If you're interested in more NPC-based rankings, such as lore rankings or some such, let me know down below because I'd love to talk about characters if the viewership is there. With all that being said, my least favourite NPC questline from each SOULSBORNE game, ranked. Let me know your most hated NPC questlines down below. For Demon Souls, I'm not as familiar with all the NPCs and questlines of this game since I've only ever done a proper playthrough with all tendency events one time. And I think for the purposes of this video, I do have to focus on those special world tendency encounters and the NPCs tied to them, as they are the least interesting questlines. The weakest, in my opinion though, is Skirvir the Wanderer. He can be found in the Tunnel City in a small cavern during the platforming segment leading down to Flamelurker. He's looking for a special weapon, the Dragon Bone Smasher, which can only be found during Pure White Tendency in the Dragon God boss room. So you get the weapon, show it to him, and you're rewarded with a Pure Greystone. Easy money. While in Pure Black Tendency, going to the same location will see you fighting a Black Phantom version of his character, the same as all the other World Tendency NPCs. My problem with Skirvir is that he's not serving what needs to be served. He's a bland character, isn't tied to any questlines, and doesn't have any unique events. Selen has her lore connection to Garl, Lord Rydell has a lot of hidden lore significance in his iconic screaming, Executioner Meralda started a trend of strong, terrifying women in Souls games, and Satsuki has the event where he tries to murder you for the Makoto. Skirvir, meanwhile, does fucking nothing. He feels like such an afterthought, and that's why he ranks the lowest for me. For Dark Souls, the questlines here are all extremely memorable, but there's one I just don't particularly care for because of the requirements needed to complete it. That being Big Hat Logan. As a character, he's your classic enigmatic sage with an oversized hat that becomes somewhat of a mage staple of the series, and he's one of the most valuable vendors for any sorcery-based build in the game, which is cool. But what you sell doesn't really matter when I'm assessing the questline, except in this case it kinda does. Big Hat Logan forces the player so far out of their way with every encounter. Sen's Fortress, if you don't have the master key to release him from his cage, you have to go all the way to the rooftops, across the broken walkway, down the massive flight of stairs, all to get the cage key, then go back into the complex, then go down to his cage, and then release him. Duke's Archives, he's locked in another cell in the room with the Pasakas, and going out of your way to come back here after getting the key at the end of the Archives area is about as tedious as you expect. But the damning part of his questline, you have to pay 183,000 souls to buy all of his spells, which is the trigger for his final encounter. What do you mean I have to pay this much just to have Logan go insane? It's classic Souls design, but makes farming 30 humanity to save Solaire look like a walk in the park by comparison. I'm glad we don't have any modern questlines that ask this much of the player in a game that is generally very skimpy with its currency, and thank fuck for that. For Dark Souls 2, there are so many NPCs to talk to, and yet so few meaningful questlines, to the point where I didn't want to pick any of the major players because I think all their quests are well done. Lucatiel, Benhart, Peyton Creighton, love them all. And I didn't want to go for the small fries either, so I had to go somewhere in the middle. I'm picking Kale the Cartographer. You find this man in a side cave at the Forest of Fallen Giants, where he'll give you a key to Majula's mansion, mentioning that his goal is to create a map of Drangleic. And I, naturally wanting to know how a windmill connects to a volcanic expanse, support his endeavour. So you head to the bottom of the mansion, find a curious map of the continent that doesn't really shed light on anything, and then you head on your way. The reason this quest just doesn't appeal to me is because it's not asking us to do anything out of the ordinary. You have to kill the last giant, collect the 4 Lord Souls, obtain the King's Ring and the Ashen Mistheart, and defeat the Throne Watcher and Defender. Do all this and all of the flames will light up on this mansion's map. Then you just chat with Kael, obtain his equipment, and watch the Dark Souls 2 dementia take his mind. That's it. We leave him to his lost memory and his filled-in map. I prefer questlines that actually get me doing things I wouldn't normally do in a generic run. Meanwhile, Kael is the questline equivalent of a participation trophy. For Bloodborne, this is the only game where I actually really like the questline I'm choosing, but it makes the list because of how it can potentially affect a player's endgame. It's Adela, Nun of the Healing Church. You first find her in the Hypogean jail, and if you wear any hunter set related to the church, you're able to send her to Erden Chapel for safety. For saving her, she wishes you to partake of her blood, which isn't a bad deal. 25% healing and 20 seconds of HP regeneration sounds nice. She's even happy to help, despite her crippling self-esteem issues. However, things get a bit queer when Ariana is brought to Erden Chapel as well. For she too can grant the hunter her blood, which has the same 25% healing perk, and a follow-up 30 seconds of faster stamina recovery. As such, you might think, oh, maybe I'll just take the blood I feel is most useful to me. And you would be a fool, for if Adela sees you taking Ariana's blood up to 3 times prior to the rise of the blood moon, she will murder Ariana, and once the blood moon does rise, will turn against the player in her insanity. Yep, she'll kill the most important NPC in the chapel who gives you one of the 3rd umbilical cords needed to achieve the true ending. Luckily there are 4 in the game, but depending on how you handle the Yosefka questline, you could find yourself locked out of the game's true final boss. All because Adela was a little bit jelly. I like the storyline, but the gameplay ramifications are savage, and it's enough to rank it as my least favorite questline in Bloodborne. For Dark Souls 3, I know I've talked about my least favorite questline at some point on the channel, I can't recall when or in what video, but we're here to chat about Arena of Karim. If there is one person who I felt deserved better in the Soulsborne games, Arena is the one. She's a blind maiden who you find imprisoned within the undead settlement, guarded by Aegon of Karim. Upon rescuing her, she becomes a miracle vendor at Firelink Shrine, and reveals her desire is to become a firekeeper, to be of use to the Ashen One. The problem with this is how easily her questline can go wrong. She, alongside Carla, who you find much later in the game, can both read Braille tomes that teach new miracles. Some of them are light-based, while others are steeped in dark. And new players will likely run into Arena's bad end as they give her the Dark Miracle Tomes and then purchase said miracles. Do this enough and Aegon takes her away, forcing you to chase and kill him before rescuing and returning her to the shrine. However, she won't sell you anything, and if you touch her with the Morn's gauntlets equipped, she'll request Aegon to kill her like he promised. Fun! But then the good ending to her questline is even more depressing. Only purchase every possible Braille Tome light miracle from her, and she will become a firekeeper. Only she's placed in the leftmost tower of the shrine among the corpses of the dead firekeepers past. She can level you up, but loses any semblance of her personality in favor of pure subservience to the Ashen One. And she's so out of the way that nobody would go there to level up from her when our firekeeper is much closer to the bonfire. I want to say that as a story, this is incredibly well designed, and the feelings it elicits from me prove that it's well written and hard hitting. But by God, I just feel like shit regardless of which ending Arena gets, and it makes me want to avoid her questline in future so she doesn't have to go through any of that. That's why it's my least favorite questline in Dark Souls 3. Not because it's bad, but because I just feel wrong with whatever choice I make. Time to be controversial, because fuck it, my least favorite NPC questline in Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is that of the Divine Child of Rejuvenation. Yeah, I'm choosing the questline that leads to the return ending of Sekiro Shadows Die Twice because, to be completely honest with you all, I fucking hate this rice bitch. The Divine Child of the Rejuvenating Waters is a vital character whom you initially meet to obtain the Mortal Blade. From then on, she'll give you rice, and you have to use the rice, reload the area, ask for more rice, rinse and repeat until she gets tired. She falls asleep, wakes up, more rice, do so until she's not feeling well, give her a persimmon because that makes sense, get more rice, which you can then give to Kuro, but it must be done before beating the Divine Dragon, go back to the child, give her the Holy Chapter Infested, which can be found in a pool in Senpo Temple. She'll go to the Illusory Hall, where you talk to her again, where she directs you to collect an item called the Holy Chapter Dragon's Return near the peak of Senpo Temple, which you give to her. Then you get the 2 Serpent Viscera items by first killing the giant serpent in the Sunken Valley, and then getting through the Serpent Cave also in the Sunken Valley, give them to the child, reload the area, eavesdrop on her, progress the story to the point where you reach Fountainhead Palace, go back to the Divine Child, and then she'll give you the frozen tears needed for the ending. This is such an obtuse situation that can only be done via this child's questline, and yet it's so easy to make a mistake and find yourself stuck wondering where you went wrong and needing to troubleshoot to figure out what the fuck is up. I cannot stand it. As for the most part, this questline is just talking to the child over and over and over and over and over and over and over. Fuck that. For Elden Ring, there are so many potential questlines that narrowing down my least favorite became a rather trying situation. But ultimately, I decided to make it more interesting by focusing on a major quest that I really dislike for its content. It's Dung Eater. To be blunt, I did his questline once to get his ending, and then ignored him for the remainder of my time with Elden Ring because I don't have the stomach to handle the depravity of his mission. The Dung Eater seeks to spread the seedbed curse across the land, and in order to do that, he defiles each of his victims in horrific, gruesome fashion. Sounds lovely. If you obtain a seedbed curse, he urges you to find his body in the shunning grounds, and upon freeing him from his cell, he'll proceed to murder Boggart. This is a personal offense because Boggart might actually be one of the only true well-intentioned NPCs in the game. He's just a man who likes eating prawn and crab and chilling with his mate, and he was your friend who confided in the player that the one thing he's afraid of is the Dung Eater. Tragic irony. Then you're forced to collect more seedbed curses to create the Mending Rune of the Fell Curse, which leads into one of the worst endings in the game, to defile and curse Order itself. And the implications of what you do with those curses to the Dung Eater is, I don't think I can say it without being demonetized. At least with other endings, you're working towards something conceivably good, be it Gold Mask, Rani, even Fear. Here, there's no skirting around it. The Dung Eater is a straight-up monster, and the only plus about his questline is how it ties into Celavis, as you can choose to make the Dung Eater your puppet, stripping him of his vengeance he so desperately craved against the Erd Tree, and forcing him to remain in his loathsome current state for all eternity. It's just a shame we have to team up with the second biggest freak in the lands between to make it happen. God, I hate these men. And that's my list. What questlines in SOULSBORNE games are your least favourite? Let me know down below. And be sure to parry that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all my future videos. My social medias are on screen now, feel free to follow me if you're comfortable. I recommend my Twitter, it's a good place to go, or my YouTube community tab, love that place as well. A shout out to my YouTube channel members for supporting me for another month, thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time for another video. Adios!